Hi, good afternoon. My name's Simon Ward. I'm the host of this afternoon's event, and that was a really scary way to start it. I'm not going to do that countdown again. That was just plain horrible. So today's event is one of a series. It's the first of a series of bi-weekly events that the Job Lab are going to run to help current job hunters and job hunters or these individuals who know they may become have to face a job hunt in the very near future. The tools and information they need to build a resilient but compelling and competitive job hunt. It's aligned with our program for guys who may or may not come out of furlough at the end of September, so the Fast Track Out of Furlough program. And it's also you can see a lot about both this event and other events in our newsletter, which is being launched for the first time on Friday. So I get all the plugs in now while I can. I'd like to say hello to Galina and to Nigel and Baz, who've joined us already. And I know there'll be a few more coming online. So keep an eye on there. Just 30 seconds on me, a lifetime in recruitment and HR, a little bit sadder than that in many ways. So my mum, my dad, my brother, my sister, and now even my wife have all been recruitment and HR experts at one time or other. And I am now a learning architect for the Jobs Lab. So I help design and deliver learning experiences for our customers for programs that are going to start from July. Particularly interested in how people consume and then embed information in learning environments. And we're looking and are building our programs around the concept of micro-learning strategies. And we're looking very carefully at career cadence. So how often do you coach people and coach cadence? How often do you coach people? We try to coach every working day. Couple of housekeeping points before we kick into the session. It's going to be very informal. The most important thing is going to be that we communicate to each other. It's about community, so we're really looking for people to engage with each other. So if you're open to connecting, please bung that into the chat. Just say open to connection, so let people know. So that we can begin to set up a community. We also have events chat on the events page, so you're more than happy to put notes or say hello or ask to connect through that process. Today, we are going to focus on these issues and challenges around building resilience into your job hunt, how you manage your mindset, how you look after your own personal wellness. And because of the two fantastic guests that we have, if we don't get time to get around to the building of an operational platform for a job hunt, then we'll do that some other time. I think we want to make the most of Laura and Suzanne, who are with us. Talking of which, I have to say, we've set a really high bar for our future events with the two guys we've got with us today. I've known Suzanne for probably getting on for about a year. We have chewed the cud on different coaching methods and strategies and ideas and areas. And I must say, I've never had a conversation with Suzanne I haven't learned from, so that's been fantastic. I've only met Laura recently, but she's phenomenal too, just very much coming from that same place of humane, deep experience. So without further ado, let's just get into the session. So if Laura, you could just spend a couple of minutes telling us about yourself, and then Suzanne, if you do the same, and then we'll kick into, I have some questions, but we'll also be looking out for questions from the guys who have signed in. If you do ask something, I should have said, sorry, if you do ask a question in the chat, please put it in capitals or use an emoji. Just to help us identify the fact it's a question so we can come to it. When I do these sessions, for some unknown reason, I seem to get a lot of emojis of a bald bloke with big ears. So any other emojis probably welcome, but I tend to get that one a lot. But sorry, I interrupted you, Laura. If you just like to say hello.
Hello, thank you for having me and that kind introduction. I'm a trainer, coach and workplace mediator. I kind of focus on well-being, resilience and mental health, but I do all this stuff as well. I work with lots of different companies. And I come from a space where actually personally I've experienced a lot. I say that's, people often ask me why I do well-being in particular and mental health, and that's because personally and through friends and family, I've seen it, I've been there myself, and I know what it's like. But obviously there's some qualifications in there as well, so that supports everything that I do.
Wonderful. And how
Suzanne?
Yeah, I'm just thinking how long we've known each other, Laura. I reckon it's been a couple of years, or a good few years now. So I always, when I was 19 years old, went to uni and didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I had the light bulb of I wanted to help people find jobs. And I've dedicated my career within the recruitment industry that I got made redundant in the recession. I was gutted, absolutely gutted. And then I ended up coaching and training people through redundancy, which is my world. It's just absolutely lights me up. I'm also a coach and a trainer, and deliver for both businesses and individuals. There's loads of names on the chat. I just want to give you all away because some of you guys, Simon, were on the Couch and Cuppa and have been in touch with. So just to say hi to everybody joining.
So my intention was to say hello when people joined, but there's been a fairly solid flow of people joining, which is fantastic. I'm really grateful for that. But everyone who is there, you're very, very welcome. And this is your session as much as it is ours. I am here purely to facilitate and to make sure that we keep more or less the time. It's going to be roughly an hour. We don't have to keep it to an hour. We've got a little bit of overhang if we need to do that. But I just wanted to kick it off just by asking you guys a question, which has been playing on my mind for some time. I'm an old bloke, you might have noticed. I think this is my third or fourth recession that I've been involved in recruitment in one way or another. But it seems a little bit different to me this time than in previous experiences. And I was just wondering whether you guys are noticing differences in the way the market and the behavior of third parties is affecting the wellness and the resilience and the motivation of job hunters.
I mean, absolutely. It is different this time, without a doubt. I think there's a huge focus on well-being at the moment anyway, from being in lockdown. From my view, basically it's because the world's different. You know, there isn't really sort of everything has changed. Our normal has changed. Everything is a bit unknown, and we're not really sure what is going to happen moving forward. And there's that fear and anxiety. And I have seen, and I was saying to Simon earlier, when I was growing up, there was always this, there seemed to be more jobs, there seemed to be more sort of practical responses, whereas now we're talking a lot more about our own well-being and how we push ourselves forward and what's important, work-life balance. And so I think not only has the world changed, but we've changed as well. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that when I talk about well-being a little bit down the line. But just like going to the supermarket, whether you hate it or you love it before, it's become quite an anxiety-inducing event, which we would never have thought about. You know, is there going to be toilet roll? You know, and that's, you know, social distancing, masks, all of that. So I think everything has become a bit scarier, and we haven't got our normal social connections as well as we perhaps did do. You know, people who had close people to talk to all the time, we've not been able to get to them like we would have done before, which I think has had a big impact. What do you think, Suzanne?
I agree. I think, and I've just looked at Nigel's uncertainty, the confusion, the fear, the unknown. Like you said, you know, we're not used to being isolated. We're human beings who usually want to be out, and having that anxiety, that lockdown on top of redundancy. Redundancy is one of the hardest things that people can go through. Not for everybody. Some people find redundancy comes at the right time. But, you know, from my own experience, for those of you who are, you've lost your team and that sense of purpose maybe as well, on top of lockdown, that's a double whammy. So it's definitely had a huge impact on health and well-being. And like we said, the uncertainty, it feels like it's been a long time, but the year, it feels like it's been a long time for people. So I think that's the thing I've noticed. Simon?
Yeah, I don't know if it's real or it's just a feeling, but it seems as if there is an acceleration of going from the early stages of the job hunt. So, you know, Nikki's just experienced redundancy, and hopefully we'll be able to help as we move forward. But from that moment when you suddenly find yourself in that unexpected place, there's an acceleration, certainly from 2008, where people are becoming more uncertain, more concerned, more worried, more fearful of the future, quicker than they have in the past. And I also think, and I can say this after 100 years in recruitment, I think that some of the standards of service from those people who in the past you have hoped to have gained support from has dropped this time. And I have great sympathy with the recruitment industry. I'm not one of those guys who goes out there and attacks them, but I think we have to be realistic that people aren't getting feedback on applications, that not even getting feedback regularly on interviews. And I think that is really beginning to drag people down as well. It begins to deflate that motivational piece, which you need every day. You just got to get up and go again. But if you feel you're hitting a brick wall and there's nothing coming back, I think that gets harder. So I think that's been a little bit of a problem this time. And I do have sympathy for the people whose job it is to help us and look after us and manage that mountain of applications that's going through LinkedIn Easy Apply. But I think they're struggling to do that at the moment. I think that's happening to them. So what are the early warning signs? So if you are working with someone or you have someone in your immediate family, friend circle or whatever, what are the early warning signs that you can see and maybe they can see in themselves that might suggest they're beginning to struggle?
Yeah, so I think this is something we could perhaps all relate to in terms of when we're struggling. What is it? How do we realise? Because sometimes we're in a bit of a bubble and we don't realise that actually life's become a bit too stressful. And I would always say, sit back, have time to think a little bit about what's going on. Where's your baseline? What does good look like for you? And then think of the physical symptoms that you have. So are you dehydrated? Have you started to get tension in your neck or your head? Have you started to get more headaches? Often when we're feeling anxious or worried, we get shortness of breath. So we really notice that, or we're struggling to sleep. And generally, what I hear a lot of from clients is that feeling of being too busy. It's almost, I think before lockdown, became fashionable to be super busy. If you weren't super busy, you weren't having a life. Whereas now I think we've learned we can step back a bit and we don't like that anymore. And we've become overwhelmed. So have a think, are you too busy? Do you start to feel, do you not know what to do first sometimes? I think they're the sort of really key signs when, you recognize that you're starting to struggle a bit.
Yeah. And I think an activity I did actually with somebody was they wrote down all of the things they've noticed about themselves when they get stressed in general, and then they underlined each one that they were feeling in the last month. And that can often give you a signal of whether you need to take some action. But like you said, Laura, it's physical signs. And I find when I get stressed, I get like skin patches or my skin flares up. It can be those physical signs. It can be the signs of where you're just going around in circles in overwhelm and you just can't think clearly. And having that time, like you said, is really valuable. Or it can be the signs that you just don't want to get out of bed in the morning and you just lose all your motivation for what you or for life or etc. So there are various different signs, and Laura and I are both accredited trainers for FAID, the First Aid Industry Body, and I recently got accredited. And there's a whole load of different signs and symptoms, but the key is that we have stress in our lives. Most of us have some degree of stress in our lives, but it can then tip into that anxiety, and that anxiety can then tip into depression. So it's just being really self-aware of how we're feeling, and there's behavioural and physical signs.
And to go back to Laura's point about being busy, and I think that is a really important point for job hunters. There is this almost natural human response to a feeling of crisis, and that is that you feel you have to do something. So I had an experience very close to me recently, and when you are a job search coach and someone in your family is out of work, it kind of becomes something of a focus because that can't go on for too long, so you have to work on it. And so this person very, very close to me on their very first day after redundancy, the very first thing they did was write their CV. By the afternoon, they were talking to recruiters, and they're on job boards in the evening of their first day. And that is a natural response. You know, it's kind of fight or flight, and you can't fight, so you do stuff. But it needs to be in the framework of doing the right things at the right time in the right order, and cutting yourself some slack as well. That person I came across 4 or 5 days later in floods of tears, because they had worked incredibly hard for 4 days doing all the wrong things and had got nowhere, and suddenly realised that their CV had the wrong messages. They talked to the wrong recruiters, and they were looking at the wrong job boards because they hadn't worked out what they wanted to do next in their career, and that's the point. So I think that's such an important point, that, and I suffer from it so much. I regularly get up and start work at 6, whether I need to or not. I regularly come out and work after my little boy's gone to bed from 8 till 10, whether I need to or not. I feel I have to. And I watch a guy called Chris O'Connell a lot. He talks about, you know, slowing down to speed up. And I think that if we can get to the working smart, work to a plan, work to a strategy, and measure, work out what works, and don't do the stuff that doesn't, I think that helps. I think that's it's such an important point. I think probably most people have felt that. And Baz has just put up a note in the chat in caps. We're all in this together, and that Baz, that is such a brilliant thing to have said. And one of the things that I have seen in this recessional market, maybe more than in the past, is just this feeling of community. It went as far as people being nicer to each other on the roads, and although that's beginning to wane a bit now, there was just this feeling we're in this together. It's nobody's fault. We're not going to blame the bankers this time. We're just in this situation. We're just going to get in together and do our best, and that's what I'm hoping that this series of events will do. That we get in together, we work as a group, we answer each other's questions, and we give each other support. Sometimes you just need to be there and listen. And my next question is kind of relevant to that. If you do feel someone is struggling and they're close to you, they're in your network, or they're in your family, or they're in your friends, whatever it is, it's about that initial approach. How do you engage with someone? I know someone who I love dearly who said to someone the other day, "How's your job hunt going?" And that was a catalyst for 20 minutes of upset. It's incredibly well, but the words were wrong. So how do you go about making those approaches, giving support to people who need it?
Yeah, and I wanted to mention a point from the previous question, actually, before I answer that question, but they do lead on. So just to say that, that resilience and that well-being is not about always being on it. It's not about always being, drinking 8 glasses of water, although that's really important. You are going to have them off days. And sometimes forgiving yourself from having those off days is so important. Letting yourself cry, that's not you not being resilient. It's just your emotions. We're human, we respond. Have a bad day. If you've swore at someone who's cut you up, fine, doesn't matter, and we move on. And I think sometimes you need that, and then you can wake up a bit fresher sometimes and go, you know what, it's okay if I eat all the biscuits in the biscuit tin. Tomorrow I'll eat less, and you've made a little bit of progress. So I just wanted to say, sometimes just let yourself be, if you like, however that be is. But on that sort of, how do we help others, or how do we approach others? I get asked this a lot with people that I talk to. My friend is struggling. How do I say, are you okay? And part of it is that being vulnerable yourself. I'm quite happy to share, where I've been in my place. There's some blogs on my site, Hampson Coaching, where I've shared some really intimate, if you like, details about what I've been through. So share your story, be vulnerable, but make time, and don't worry if you don't know what to say, because they might say anything. And if you don't know if you're worried about the answer, then you might not even ask. But just listening and asking the question is enough. It's okay if afterwards, if they tell you something you don't know how to fix, quite often people aren't looking for a fix. They're just looking to say it out loud and to talk to somebody and know that somebody's listening. So we've had a question as well. Sorry.
There's a question from Lucia, which I'll come back to Suzanne if I may, but I just thought we should go to that if we can. I don't quite know what sort of technology it's all changing, but it's a really important question from Lucia that she's been to a number of interviews over a number of months and is beginning to get the feeling that in fact she's being used as a benchmark, and after events she is being ghosted, and we are running and did run a little program called feedback campaign to try to infuse people to at least give feedback after interview, because I think it's incredibly destructive. I'd like to get your views on the impact on motivation, on resilience, on well-being when something completely outside your control, and that's the point that I'll come back to later, but something that is completely outside your control is having such a negative effect on you.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's so tough because you feel like you've lost your purpose, and if your purpose is just job searching and you're not getting anywhere, I would encourage you sort of to continue motivation, but to start looking in other areas where you can find that purpose a little bit, and sometimes looking in places you wouldn't normally look. I'm not the jobs expert, so I'm going to shut up now, but I find that when I talk to people who have been long-term unemployed, that sometimes doing something a little bit outside the box that they wouldn't think would lead to something like charity work or some kind of volunteering, or finding a role that isn't what they used to, kind of looking at upskilling in different areas. I don't know, Suzanne, you're the jobs expert, and Simon.
Yeah, and Lucy, a big hug to you, because I know you and I'm rooting for you. When you're not alone, When I've had some people reach out to me recently who have had so many knockbacks, and I always say, look at what's working and what's not. And if you're finding that you're getting really high volume of interviews, there's two things. One, to remember that you are being recognised by your skills and expertise. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting those interviews in this market. So there is that to try and keep optimistic that you are getting the interviews in the first place. But if you're feeling like it's being a bit of a benchmarking exercise and you're not getting that feedback, 26 interviews, that is a lot of interviews. And I don't know if you've had interview coaching, or if anyone out there is feeling that you're really unconfident with interviews. And I'm not here plugging services, but if potentially consider having some time, or even if it's if people can't afford to have one-to-one support, to double up with somebody else and do some mock interviews or something. But I agree at the moment, and we will also put a positive on here, because some sectors are really busy, and I'm hearing from recruiters that can't even fill jobs, and that they're noticing that there is really good demand out there. I think what Laura said about, and Lucia, I know you're also doing some volunteer mentoring, which is great, and I'm really excited that you're doing that. Great opportunity. Just to get that confidence. If you've had lots and lots of knockbacks, your confidence is going to be low. So great that you're doing that, amazing. But remember, with all these interviews, that you have incredible skills and expertise. And also remember, from a confidence point of view, what was my poll? 302 interviewers who answered that poll, 57% of them have never had interview training. So, sometimes you get all this prep and you go for an interview and you think it's your fault if you haven't got through. Well, actually, look at the quality of the interviewers as well. That's something that's really been quite shocking. And a friend of mine did the same poll. Between us, 600 odd votes, and over 50% of people hadn't had interview training. But the interviews are the kind of process that we've still got to go through. It's important to remember with any of it, two-way street, like a company pair of trainers. It's got to be a good fit for you as well as them. So keep going with those interviews. But if your confidence is low, consider getting some coaching or some support.
Yeah, I think Suzanne, we had a couple of texts coming and say they can't hear you very well. I don't know if you can turn your mic up. a bit, that'd be brilliant. Thank you. A couple of things I'd just say about that, and as a generic rule through your job hunt, focus on what you can control. And in this is question, she has reached a conclusion as to why she's being ghosted, that she's being benchmarked for roles. That may or may not be right, but I suspect that she doesn't know for a fact. And what is happening is she's spending so much time thinking about, trying to justify, trying to work out why she's not getting feedback. She's trying to spend time in the areas where she has no control. Unquestionably, it is absolutely very unprofessional. I couldn't agree more. There is no defense for it, but you have no control on that. So we have a limited amount of emotional stability. We have a limited amount of intellectual focus, and we have a limited amount of time to do what we need to do in our job hunt. The more time we spend on the things we can't control, the less time we can spend on the things that are going to make a difference. So this is kind of tough love, and it doesn't. I know it doesn't necessarily help a lot this year, but just let it go. Just let it go, because you are not going to help yourself trying to analyse why you've been ghosted. Their behaviour is appalling, but that is not your responsibility. That is not your fault. You go on to the next one, and it will come. And I think I've seen this conversation so many times, and it's got. We just have to focus and move on. I also saw a note from John Elaine, and it's really important. He was talking about using your network and moving forward, and it finished off with the caps that said, "Get them to work for you." And this is just one point I want to pick up really, really quickly. We all have networks. Some have bigger networks than others. We usually forget to ask them what we want them to do. So, we're out of work. We might not be massively confident at that moment in time. So we drop subtle notes like, "I'm looking about if you've heard anything," or just ask them. Be straightforward, be transparent. And as John says, get them working for you by telling them what you want them to do. Can you introduce me to people in your network, in your organization, that will help me and may be able to lead me to a role? Be explicit and be straightforward and be direct. And that, I just wanted to make that comment. So that sort of took us off left stream a little bit. But one thing that has come up in Laura's answers, and this shows my ignorance a little bit. There is a lot at the moment about being kind to ourselves, cutting ourselves a little bit of slack, and that seems to have increased over the last 3 to 4 months. And some of it, in my opinion, is getting almost to the point where it's clickbaity. There are people saying things that they know people want to hear. And then I saw a post on Monday that said, "Have you been tough enough to leave people behind? If you are keeping your loved ones close to you and they are not strong for you and they're not supporting your job hunt, cut free from them, let them go, move on without them." For me, that was a step too far. I think life is a team sport. I think job hunting is a team sport. I think work's a team sport. To advise someone to cut their family loose and move on without them seems to be a step too far. So I just wonder, where's the line drawn on cutting ourselves slack, looking after ourselves, being kind to ourselves, and being downright selfish and living in a one-person centered world?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We do hear a lot about it. And I talk about self-compassion quite a lot. And because sometimes when people come and they are exhausted or stressed or suffering with something, they give out a lot and forget to look after themselves. For me, it's about balance. So looking at those basic needs that we need to fulfill, and then thinking, actually, is it negatively impacting on other people? If it's not, then it's not selfish. If it is, then you need to think again about what it is you're doing in terms of being kind to yourself. And being kind to yourself is not time consuming either, but sometimes it is about saying no and giving yourself that space. So there's definitely a balance there. And I do talk about balance quite a lot, actually, but that sort of impact on others around you, I think it's important to sort of consider. Suzanne, I don't know if you...
Yeah, absolutely.
Hear me?
No, there was something through the conversation that I wanted to say, and it also relates to Lucia's as well, with knockbacks and being kind. Something that had a profound impact on me. And I'm just going to check. Give me a thumbs up, folks. Can you hear me better, or do you want me to bring my computer nearer? Just give me a quick. Can you hear me any better? Okay, I'm going to. Sorry if you can see my face really big, but something I read, and it was that. And if you know me, you'll know that I do like the spiritual side, that we are where we're meant to be right now. And we always say, don't we, as if it's not your door, it's not going to open. But I read something that said, life, every step of the journey is part of that journey. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, there's going to be knockbacks. And in a market that's been so hard, there's going to be multiple knockbacks. But I'm a real believer now that we are where we're meant to be right now. And it's because the right opportunity is there. It just hasn't come yet. And I'm a really firm believer in that. There's a book I've been reading, and if anyone, it's helped with that, and it's The Universe Has Your Back. It's just a really nice read that, from those of you that feel like you're just not aligned or you're not getting where you want to be, it's a nice read.
I just wanted to quickly catch up with Brian, who asked a question about ageism. It's dropped off the screen now. Yeah. And I'll be completely honest with you, Brian, I only saw the top half of your question. When I picked up, it dropped off the screen. But from what I saw, you're asking, do you think ageism is real? There's a lot of it in the market at the moment. I'll get your guys' view first. I have a fairly strong opinion on this because I'm an old bloke. But yeah, Lucia, Laura, do you want to have a
I absolutely think that, there's ageism, there's sexism, there's racism. I think there's lots of things that affect that. Ageism itself, I know my partner works at Capital One. He works in risk, and he is surrounded by graduates with earning more money, and they have all these extra qualifications. I think they don't have children, they don't have any other responsibilities, and I'm a mum, I've got 3 kids, and so I think there is a unintended kind of bias there almost. So I've been to interviews and been asked, are you planning on having any more children, or at what age do you think you'll get your career back, and I've never really dropped it. I'm only I say only 36, but I coach a lot of students, and I'm quite old actually to them, and so I definitely think it's a thing, and I think we have to overcome some of those barriers. And sometimes when we feel it's just not the right place for us to be. If that's apparent, I think there are places where ageism and all those other biases aren't a thing, and it's about overcoming them a little bit and going to the right places.
And I'm hoping that you can hear me. But I've supported people in their 60s to change job. I've supported senior directors in their 50s and 60s into organisations. And what I would say is, and one guy who had direct discrimination that said, we're going to look for somebody younger. And then the next amazing interview they went to in an amazing company hired that candidate because of their skills and their expertise and what they were going to bring to the party. So there will always be companies out there that will really, really value that expertise and hold on to that fact that you've got that, and be confident with anyone, any age, be confident in what you have and what you have to offer.
I think both of those comments are absolutely spot on. I think it exists. But from my experience, and I can only go from my experience, is that I think it is in a minority. I think the organisations I have worked with, both 60,000 headcount professional services firms down to 10 headcount marketing consultancies, or I have seen it, but I have seen it infrequently. Certainly at an organisational level, I think we can see it at individual levels, and it's not just ageism. It is sexism, it is racism, it's disableism. There's all of those. They all exist. The one thing that we're working on at the moment in the Jobs Lab, and it may help. And Brian, I'll take this offline with you. is that if you are concerned about ageism affecting your job hunt, there are things you can do to reduce the risk, and we can help with that. We talk about leading with your chin. The number of times I had conversations with people who are around my age, which is just plain old, and they say they're really worried about ageism, they're worried about their effect, and then the first line in their CV identifies they have 35 years experience. You're kind of leading with your chin. So we need to look at how we can address the issue. We have to work in the real world. You know, if it is out there, we're going to do things that are practical to address it and enhance your opportunities in organisations who may suffer from that. But I honestly believe that it is a minority in organisations, and I think it could get out of sort of kilter with reality if we're not careful.
Folks, how's my volume now? Just doing a volume check. Is it any better?
I can hear you.
I can hear you. You were quiet before, but I could just catch.
Hopefully it's better. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know in the chat function, and I can turn the volume up if needed.
I have to say, reading the chat, and I'm not massively experienced running these events, so I've missed a few questions. And I apologise for that, and there's a delay, and that's the excuse I'm going to use for missing the questions. But it's been really great watching the level of support you're giving each other. Ignoring us three, the level of support you're giving each other in the chat is one of the major purposes of doing this. Zoe Wilmot, I think, has probably dropped off, and I'll contact her separately, but she asked, are we going to do this again? She was enjoying it, and she thought it was valuable. The answer is absolutely yes. As a minimum, the Jobs Lab will host a LinkedIn event once every 2 weeks, and I'm really hoping, and I think we're well on the way, that these two phenomenal coaches today are going to help support an event on this topic, maybe more special in smaller, sort of thinner, director topics, but within this area, at least on a monthly basis, because I think this is so important, and it's so different to anything I've ever seen before, the impact of what is happening in the market. So the answer to Zoe is yes, once every fortnight, once a month, we're going to be looking at these kind of subjects with these fantastic coaches. Okay, so we live in a soundbite world, and I can't apologise for that, but it's the idea of almost a resilience, wellness, mental health elevator pitch. You have 2 minutes with someone who you're never going to talk to again. They're on a bus, they're on a train, they're disappearing, but you think they're struggling, or they've told you they're struggling. What are the things you would advise them to do in those 2 minutes that you believe would make a difference?
If you know that you're struggling, reach out to somebody, talk to somebody. That's got to be key if you know that you're struggling. Have a look online at the NHS Mood Meter, because that's a really nice diagnostic tool that you can just have a bit of a check to see whether you may need to speak to and get further assistance. So I would look at the Mood Meter, but definitely talk to somebody about it. Don't bottle it up. And also take some time out if you're struggling. Take regular breaks. Get out and about in fresh air and just take that time. That would be mine. Laura, anything else you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little bit of joke sometimes that I often teach doctors, because I do quite a bit of work in the NHS, but I teach them to drink water, go to bed on time, and breathe. And they're 3 things. They're all free. It's not always complicated, essentially, but, drink before you're thirsty. Make water the first thing you drink when you wake up. You're always going to be dehydrated. I think people get the sleep wrong, and when you're stressed anyway, good bedtime routine. Go back to being a toddler. Think about what you would do, having a nice bath. It's actually scientifically proven to support you. Having a warm bath, raise your body temperature, or a shower, something like that, and mindfulness. And people sort of irk at mindfulness a bit like meditation sometimes. I must admit, I was the same sort of maybe 12 years ago now. I sat in a room with somebody wearing sort of socks and sandals, dare I say it, I hope that's okay, who asked me to close my eyes in front of like 30 people, and I was like, no way, it's not going to work for me. But I have since found the right way to do mindfulness for me, and breathing and taking that time and having mindful activities, and it reduces that sense of being overwhelmed. So for me, those are the kind of three things that I would for at least stop and think, and then have a look at those things really in terms of what it is that's happening for you right now. Go back to basics.
I think as a bloke, and a bloke from my generation, the focus on mindfulness and the simplicity of that advice is just fantastic. So I have actually found, to my great shock, that breathing really, really helps. And it was one of those things, maybe 5-10 years ago, if there had been someone who was going through a breathing exercise before or after a major meeting in a recruitment company, they would have had a hard time. And I would have been one of those probably giving them a hard time. But those really simple things, and water just can't be overstated, can it? It's magical. It really is. It changes my memory, it changes my mood, it changes my optimism, and I know when I haven't been having it. And yet I've probably spent 3/4 of my life dehydrated, which is bonkers. One, I missed who asked the question, but someone was talking about really horrible experiences with recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel free to talk about this from a slight, a point of some knowledge. And also I feel free to make the critical comments I'm about to make. There are some fantastic recruiters. There are some fantastic recruitment companies. The issue is that they're not exclusively fantastic. There are some appalling recruiters and some appalling recruitment companies, and that's probably true of all industry. There are definitely some appalling job search coaches, and there are terrible milkmen and really, really bad coal miners. I know they all exist, but the problem with recruiters is the impact they can have on someone's life. When you compare that with the level of preparation, training, professional development they get to put them in a position where they can have that impact, it is shocking, and it's no surprise that recruiters are not what we always hoped they would be. I mean, my dad was a recruiter his whole life, and he worked his way up and worked in upper echelons, and he cared about candidates as much as he cared about clients. It is, I'll be honest, and there'll be recruiters, there may be recruiters on here. It is a long time since I have had an open conversation with a recruiter over a beer where they have indicated in any way they care as much about their candidates as they do about their bills. And that is a fundamental problem until recruitment industry as a whole changes the balance between fixed salary and commission levels. When people are earning more than 50% of their take-home pay in commission, it is that is driving the behaviours. And employers, particularly in the recruitment in the RPO industry, anyone using an RPO, anyone engaging a recruiter, ask them about their remuneration model. That will drive the behaviours of the people who are going to represent your brand in the industry. And there's a lady on this call who worked with me at Legal & General, and she knows, because she used to have this conversation with me years ago. It isn't new. It's been like this forever. It just comes to a point of focus when we're hurting so much. When you have a bad experience from a recruiter, feel sorry for them and move on. They're not happy. They're not doing a good job. They know they're not. Move on. They're failing, and they won't be in the industry for long.
Couple of things to make, and it's not about finding a good agency, it's finding a good agent. And I had a gentleman that came to me whose confidence was really knocked by a recruitment company or consultant, and really knocked. And then within a month he had a job offer and landed an amazing role with a much better recruitment agent. So it is finding a good recruitment agent. I will say, and I've got a lot of respect for the recruitment industry. I've worked in it for a long time. Some recruiters out there have also been saying they've had a really hard year because they know that if they have to give, or if they have to let somebody down, if they're putting people forward to roles and they have to then let the other two people down, some of the recruiters have been suffering with mental health issues as well. And I know there's some bad recruiters out there, and I know that, but they've also had a hard time, some of them too.
I think I've heard somewhere
positive in that some of the market at the moment like I said, some of them are saying that, they can't even fill some of the jobs out there with some sectors. So there is definite some positive to take from this, in that the market is picking up. And don't forget, people have, out there have been job searching in the hardest market we've seen. So the fact now that we're out of lockdown and things are picking up, it is a positive.
Yeah. And Colin's just made the point that that they're paid by their clients, not their candidates, and it's the clients who have a responsibility. So they have all the power. Don't accept recruiters' terms and conditions. Impose your own. You can control behaviours, and it's going to come from that source. And every employer I've worked with over the last 8, 9, 10 years as a recruitment strategist, we have changed terms and conditions, not to save money, although sometimes we've achieved that. Usually we have, but usually to change behaviours of our suppliers. It starts with the employers. And that'd be great. That's my little. I'll get off my orange box. That's my campaign statement for the day. Laurie, you want to run a short exercise. I want to make sure we don't run out of time for that. And I think we can come back. There are more questions. There are more questions coming up. But would this be an appropriate time to do that? Or do you want to do it towards the end? I just don't want to lose sight of that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think there are a few more questions if you want to go ahead and perhaps just give me a few minutes at the end. I'm fine with that.
So that way, more than happy to carry on.
Yeah, people might feel sleepy and just want to have a rest after.
So that's optional, isn't it? If you want to stay on for the mindfulness at the end, you can. I've seen it on here, Lucia, you've got your gardening, and that's been a lifeline for you, and doing art, creative things. Absolutely, making sure. And I will say this, when we've all been working full time, you're busy working, you know that when you go into that next job, you're going to be busy again. Starting a new job is a busy time, mentally, physically, it's busy. And I know there's huge pressure. And if you've been following my posts on LinkedIn, you know that I've been made redundant twice and been out of work as a single mum, and it's hard not knowing when that next money's coming in. But there's also an opportunity to potentially do some things, to upskill, to learn, to do some hobbies, as well as doing your job search, trying to have that balance. And you'll look back on this time at some point, and hopefully, if you've also fulfilled in voluntary work or doing your hobbies, interests, etc., as well as your job search, you're going to feel that you've accomplished something there. And I think people really struggling are doing job search every day, all day long, not having the breaks. And you end up getting more and more confused about, well, what am I even looking for? Is it ever going to happen? And go around in circles. And having that time and that balance can really, really help your job search.
Okay, so I think at the moment, I think I picked up the questions that have been asked. If I've missed any, ask them again. I'll pick them up in the chat. The next question I was going to ask is the limitations of a coach in this space. So and at what point, what are the indicators that someone might need to take some kind of step towards clinical care beyond what you guys can offer and what coaching can offer? How do you guys know that that's the time to make that piece of advice? How does an individual maybe know that they should be considering that? And thirdly, what's available to them? What happens?
Yeah, and this is something I do because what I noticed when I was coaching clients, maybe for the last 5 years now, is that people come with one issue, and then I do holistic, I like to call it holistic coaching. So I look at the whole life, and then I do a little bit of a questionnaire about how they're feeling, what's going on. So to work out, as a coach, do they need to see their GP? Do they need to have more clinical involvement? I ask them a number of questions. So things like, how are your emotions day to day? Can you manage your emotions, or do you feel like they're getting out of control? How many times can you not stop yourself from worrying? Okay, because if that sense of worrying and overwhelm is becoming too much and things are out of control, we all get sort of catastrophic thinking where we can tell ourselves the worst end to a story or whatever has happened. But actually, is it overwhelming our day? Can we not sleep at night? So exhaustion. So I do 3 E's basically. So emotion, exhaustion, and energy. So exhaustion, in terms of, have you got any symptoms of exhaustion? What's going on there for you? And why is that? So really getting down to some of the things that are causing that. You know, are you feeling like you've got a cold all the time? You know, oh, Simon's left us. Have you, you know, actually feeling generally run down, physically unwell? As well as other things. Have you noticed anything about the way you talk? Maybe you're talking slower or faster. So there's, again, those physical signs. And energy. Are you at a point where, in terms of your energy, you can't do the basic things? Are you struggling and thinking, I can't be bothered to get in the shower this morning, or I really don't want to take my kids to school? You do it anyway, but actually your energy's at a real low time kind of stage there, and it's different for everybody. And of course, coaching can do amazing things, and people have come to me on the edge of their life and have thanked me 6 weeks later when they are in a completely different perspective and world of their own. But it can only do so much, and there is that working with people and saying, actually, now is the time. You know, taking antidepressants is nothing to be ashamed of. Do you just need to see your GP just to say that, so that they're aware of how you're feeling? And also thinking about other things that might be going on. So I suffer and have suffered for the last 5 years with something called post PTSD and PMDD. I've also had PMD, all the P's, and I like to do things in 3s, you've probably noticed, but they're all things I needed a doctor for. And so recognizing when I'm just, you know, generally run down, or I need support, I'm struggling with my motivation or my general well-being, and then when things have tipped over to, I need some clinical involvement now, I need an expert in that particular area, has been quite crucial to me coming out of some of those things.
Suzanne?
Yeah, no, I mean, some people have said to me, you know, I don't know if I need job search coaching, resilience coaching, or therapy, or doctor's support. And I think it's, again, if you get to the point where you just don't feel that you can function every day in everyday life, then that is the point to consider getting some further support. I do think the mood meter on the NHS is very useful to have a look at if anyone feels that they are struggling. But I think it's once you start, you just lose that zest for everyday activities, is the time to consider that. Because if you're really feeling that you are struggling, you're not going to be doing a productive job search.
Yeah. I was speaking to a friend yesterday who has an 18 or 19-year-old son who has just gone through the worst possible, in a way, first year at uni. You know, it wasn't what he'd worked for. He ended up sort of almost in a prison cell in South Wales for his first year, and he is just completely withdrawn from the world. He is in a spare bedroom, and there's nothing coming back from him, and because he is officially an adult, there are limitations as to what a parent can do. Is there anything that I could advise that friend to do in terms of helping with he obviously is seeing the very worst case scenario mapping out ahead of her, is very scared, but just doesn't know what she should do, what's available to her, how she can support someone. I guess it's the same with anyone who has a relationship with an adult. How do you support an adult? You can't instruct. You don't have those the power or authority to do. And maybe it's a team. Right.
Yeah, I mean, be there and give permission, because quite often we feel like we're in a situation that we're stuck in. And I've been in situations I've been stuck in. I was in an abusive relationship, and I didn't realize there was ever a way out of it. And I think for somebody to tell me, and it wasn't for me until I started a new job myself. I was getting redundant, getting made redundant. I didn't get made redundant. I got a new job before it. I felt financially stuck as well. And I think giving permission that actually life's short and life can change, and if you're not happy, you've got to change it, because no one's going to do that for you. So if you need to leave, if you need to do something completely different, it's okay. And sometimes people need to hear that. They need to hear that it's okay. This is, the way you're feeling, that's a normal way to feel, almost. That it's okay to be okay. It doesn't feel okay when you're not okay, or it's okay not to be okay. But actually, it is okay to talk about it. And I think giving that permission, especially as a parent, because I'm a mum myself. My eldest is 11, but I've gave her permission to cry, give her permission to not do something she doesn't want to do, have that mindset, talked about, the future seems like a long time. You're in this world. It goes quick, but got to make the most of it. So stop right now and let's walk away. Let's go home together. Let's leave this place. We can't go to Australia at the moment, obviously, but where else? What else can we do? And I think there is that part of it.
I love the idea of giving permission, because this young guy, his mother was criticised by an ex-partner for allowing this guy to say what he said. So he said, "We don't want him to say that. You failed because you've allowed our son to say that." And in fact, actually, if the mother had heard what you just said, and I will forward the recording of this to her, she would realise that actually she needs to give the guy permission to feel how he feels and make the changes to his life to make himself happy. Mm-hmm. And that's really, really important. I did have one question come in, and it sounds it's come from someone who clearly read a post of mine yesterday. So I'm going to answer it out of just self-importance, really. So from Simon, what's the best advice you can give a fellow job hunter in just 6 words? Well, this isn't coming off the tip of my tongue because I wrote it yesterday. It's never give up, and it is review, renew, retarget. They're my 6 words, and I think that never giving up is really important in this market. And this is what this session is about. How do you create the platform and the motivation and the strength to not give up? And I think that's really important. We're kind of coming up.
Really quick one. Mine in 6 words would be you haven't got that role yet. That would be mine in 6. You haven't got that role yet. It'll come. Keep going.
Yeah, that's brilliant too. Syed, if you could just send me Suzanne's and I'll put that on a post as my own in the next couple of days, that'd be brilliant. Thank you. This session has been brilliant, and I've been watching the comments. They've been coming through thick and fast, and I've missed a lot of them. Open Connection has been fantastic. The support we've given each other for a number of you. John is clearly a guy worth getting in touch with. I'm not sure if he's a cricket fan because he thinks Australia is great, but I'll let him off that one. It's my wife's favourite place.
I love Australia. Come on.
I've been to Australia. I want to go. My wife's been, and I think she'd quite happily go again with or without me.
Give her permission, Simon.
I want to give myself permission to go with her. Yeah, apparently Australia is great, John. I have heard that. I only got to New Zealand myself, but yeah, it's been a great session. We are getting close to the hour. I do want to do the wellness exercise because I want to do it with you. So first of all, if people do leave now, I think you're missing a trick. So please stay on. But most importantly, in case you do go, I want to publicly give my thanks to these 2 fantastic coaches. It's been a brilliant session. And if you think this has been good, you should have been a part of putting this together with these 2. It's been brilliant. Really appreciate the support. Appreciate the time, and everyone who's been on as well. It's for our first one. I think I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope other guys have too. I hope some of you might turn up to the next one. But we'll be doing another one focused on resilience wellness within a month. I hope.
Yeah, and also just to mention, feel free to link up with any of us on LinkedIn. And if you feel that you would really benefit from a webinar in closed doors around resilience mindfulness, then just let us know. We're open to do that if you feel that you would prefer that. Otherwise, like you said, Simon, we'll continue to do them live.
And because I'm a coward, I'm sort of reticent to move away from the technology that's more or less worked today. But I do think, and I'd love people just to stay in the chat, next time we should do this on Zoom. You can keep your cameras off if you want to. You can put them on if you want to, but I think it becomes more interactive on Zoom. we get to look you in the eye and tell you stuff. You get to talk to us. We can, that would make this even more interactive, and I'd really like to do that. I'll just get my apologies for the tech issues in now, even though, a month in advance. But I do think that would be great. I think that's really valid, Suzanne. Laura, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I promise you this is only going to take 2 minutes, and it only takes 2 minutes because this is something you can do anywhere. So if you feel able, close your eyes or bring your gaze down until your head is resting gently forward. Take some deep breaths in and out, and try to notice the breath entering and leaving your body. Allow yourself to feel completely relaxed, with each of your limbs feeling heavy. If a thought enters your head, let it pass, like on a windy day when clouds are going across the sky. And if you notice any tension in your body, relax, let it pass, breathe through that tension. So breathe deeply and rhythmically in and out. And just try to slow down your breathing so it feels comfortable. Remember those clouds passing by, beautiful sky, the sun's there. Just continue breathing in and out. Now, when you're ready, raise your head if bowed or open your eyes and come back to the room. And I just want to thank you for taking just those few minutes with me. I hope you felt some benefit and continue to feel some benefit. It is something that is so quick. You can do it pretty much anywhere. And it just really helps to just recenter yourself, just give yourself a couple of minutes. And if you are starting off on your journey of mindfulness, then that's a great one to start. You put the kettle on, do the exercise. By the time it's boiled, you're a calmer individual. Thank you very much for having me, Simon. I absolutely loved it. I'll start to my normal speed now.
When I turned my camera off, this is how good that exercise was. When I turned my camera off for 2 minutes, I had really agonizing cramp in my left hamstring. And I thought, I can't stay on camera because someone will record it and it'll end up and I'll look really stupid. So I thought, I'd turn the camera off, I went off it. During your exercise, the cramp went. And it'd been there for 10 minutes. So that must be relaxation or something. It's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention.
Voice you had.
Well, yeah, that's my calming voice that I use at bedtime and all other times of stress when people are getting really stressed. But it is a really short exercise. Remember your breath. There are some a few resources on my website, which is Hampson Coaching, free resilience guide, some signs of exhaustion there, some blogs. Read it, and if you want to do a little bit more mindfulness with me or anything else, then do get in touch. It'd be great to hear from you. But thank you very much, Simon, and thank you for having me. And everybody else.
Pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Suzanne, any last thoughts?
Yeah, no, just to say thanks everyone for joining. I hope you've enjoyed it today, and it's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure Keep going with it, and I'll see you soon for sure. Like I said, if you do feel like you need support, just reach out to us on LinkedIn for sure.
Yeah. And I have done a little bit of homework for you guys. I've been looking through the market for coaches in these areas for some time. So I've done that original filter. These two guys are fantastic. If you want any support, and also Suzanne has been kind enough not to talk too much about job search, but Suzanne is as good a job search coach as you'll ever find too, and has a very different and group related approach. So linking with them both, you'll get massive value from their content. And thank you again for staying on today. I've loved it, and it wasn't quite as scary as I thought it was after that countdown. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks ever so much, guys. Really enjoyed it. Cheers.